Welcome to Above Replacement Radio. I am your host, Chris Gianta. I might be becoming a bad baseball fan who can't enjoy the romantic things because of advanced statistics. 15 years from now, I want to be on the early baseball committee. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran.
I literally have the Fangraphs hoodie, the baseball reference t-shirt, just repping some stats, you know what I'm saying?
It's not necessarily Hall of Fame. It's not necessarily above average, but we can guarantee you we are better than just the standard replacement level college sophomore.
And welcome to Above Replacement Radio, where we're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Gianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing very well today. First show in a while. Once again, we've both been busy. I would like to say welcome to all of our new listeners that are joining us after seeing Chris on Fergie Jenkins' Instagram story. We love Fergie here. We're big Fergie fans. We did an entire episode on him a couple of years ago. So I'm sure, you're here for that. So definitely go check that one out while you're here. But welcome.
Yeah. Shout out to everybody that researched me after seeing me with Mr. Ferguson Jenkins. Been a pleasure. I have really we'll get into our topics here, but I have nothing but nice things to say about Wrigley Field. I was surprised at how, I went in with high expectations and it still exceeded that.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say that it's overrated. I don't really see where that's coming from. I went many years ago, 6 years ago now. I saw Jose Quintana start for the Cubs. That's how long ago I went. But no, I loved Wrigley when I went. It was very nice. Obviously it's a very historic ballpark. There's a lot of expectations going in. And to me, it lived up to it.
Yeah, and it's been modernized, but not without the tradition of it taken away. And like, I expected the seats to be smaller. I expected my experience to be a little less comfortable, but and we weren't even in the bourgeoisie seats. We were in the 300 level, and everything was very well kept. So shout out to Wrigley Field, definitely near the top of the list. And if I didn't have like the great nostalgia and tradition with Fenway, I might have like Wrigley just top of the list for me. But for Fenway, it's just I have too many memories there, so it probably takes the top. But it's this cool new spot. If you haven't checked it out, Wrigley Field in Chicago, just go check it out. It's pretty trendy.
No, it just opened actually.
Yeah. It's
very Instagrammable.
Right. Yeah, it's trendy. It's very, very earthy, crunchy vibes. Go check it out at Wrigley Field. All right. Yeah. But back to the topics of the MLB. The team that was really just taking the world by storm, the first couple months of the season, started the season 29-7. They have finally been taken down. At the top of the AL East. They are now second in the AL East to the Orioles. But first we'll talk about the Rays side of it, as the Rays have gone 3-12 in the month of July for the worst record in baseball. They've I think time sort of caught up with them, but they're just they're not keeping up, and now they're in second place.
Yeah, this downfall has kind of been quietly happening for quite a while now. The Rays started season 30-9, which was obviously just like such an unprecedented start to the season. And since then, it's kind of been a very slow fall into mediocrity. They are 30-31 in their last 61 games, dating back to May 12th. The Orioles, on the other hand, are 35-24 in that span, record in the American League. By half a game over the Texas Rangers. Yeah, the Rays, this is, like I said, it's been very quietly happening, but I think it's certainly gotten a lot louder since the month of July started. They've been, they went on like a 7-game losing streak towards the beginning of the All-Star, or towards before the All-Star break. And they've continued to struggle. They lost to the Orioles last night on the day that we're recording this to officially drop into sole possession of second place. And yeah, I mean, Chris, what have been the biggest reasons for this downfall?
It's been their offense, specifically in July. It's been their offense. In July, they have the third worst batting average, second worst on base percentage, fourth worst slugging, and third worst OPS. And they also have the worst expected slugging and expected WOBA. And individually speaking, Wander Franco is hitting 204 with a 642 OPS. Randy Arozarena is hitting 193 with a 580 OPS and a 29.5% strikeout rate. And Josh Lowe, who was a how about that of mine, really started the season well and was one of those Rays where I was like, this guy's putting up a 1,000 OPS. He's definitely come down to earth, especially in the month of July. He is hitting 179 with a 540 OPS and a 37.2% strikeout rate in this month. And that strikeout rate kind of alarms me because one of the things that I said in the how about that was that his strikeout rate was down significantly. But
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, you finish your point. Mine's completely different.
I would kind of disagree that it has been a slow fall over the past, however many 61 games, because you mentioned, 30 and 31 in their last 61. So before July, from that span, from when that span started to when July started, that means that they've gone, I think 27 and 19 in that span, which obviously isn't at the rate that they were, prior to that, obviously, where they were taking the world by storm, as I was saying. But maybe it was more of a, coming back down to earth, but still doing really well and maintaining their spot in first place. I would have to double check to see like how many games they were ahead by heading into July, because I mean, I think it's really all just been happening in this month, because the Orioles have also gotten hot in this month. They've won 10 of their last 12, and I think we're going to get into them a little bit later. But I think it's really been over this past month. But yeah, what were you gonna chime in with?
Well, there is something that's been legitimately a concern for 2 months. Not even like it's been specifically bad here, but just generally fine the rest of the way. It's their bullpen. Over the last however many years that the Rays have been like a perennially very good team, they've been kind of associated by having a good bullpen, right? I mean, the stable was like there in 2020 and 2021 as well, but it's been kind of non-existent over the span since going back to May 12th, which is the span in which they're 30 and 31. Their bullpen has the fourth lowest FWAR in the major leagues. They're only ahead of the Angels, the Mets, and the Nationals in this span. They have a 4.31 bullpen ERA, a 4.63 FIP, and their 1.34 home runs per nine is the fifth worst in the majors. And their FWAR as an entire unit is 0.4. So that's been a major issue for them. And, normally a major strength. And when their offense has been struggling and their offense also just hasn't been lighting the world on fire over this time, and their pitching's been, their starting rotation's been all right. The bullpen just hasn't really delivered. And it's not even really a case of like a lot of specific guys being terrible, with the exception of maybe like Yanni Chirinos. It's been that no one has really stepped up. Pete Fairbanks, who has only pitched 12 innings in this span because he's been on and off the injured list, has been their most effective reliever with a 0.4 FWAR in 2.5 months. He does have a 288 FIP, which is solid, but like I mentioned, that's only 12 and a third innings pitched. All the guys that have pitched a lot of innings, like Colin Poche at 21, he has a 391 FIP. That's only going to give you a 0.2 FWAR. And yeah, he has a 257 ERA, but a reliever ERA is not the best metric to look at. Jason Adam, who is their closer coming into this year, he has a 461 FIP over his last 25 innings pitched. They just haven't really had anyone stepping up to the plate, or at least on the mound in this span, and that's kind of been their biggest issue.
Right. Yeah. It is a correct statement to say that they've become known for their bullpen, especially when they were making it far in the playoffs in 2020 and even going back to like 2019, they were known for having a very good bullpen. And I'm wondering if part of that has to do with them having a little bit more responsibility. I know when we talked about Drew Rasmussen going on the IL, 3 weeks after Jeffrey Springs also hit the IL with Tommy John surgery, I was wondering, like, maybe this can affect the bullpen because the starters, there's less reliable starters to throw more innings. So I think more innings might be going to the bullpen, and they might not be able to be as effective because maybe they're tired, or maybe they just, are not used to this level of responsibility. But I don't really have any numbers to back that up. I don't even know if they've pitched necessarily more innings, but it might be it's a hypothesis to go off of.
Yeah, no, I mean I think, that's the one thing where you expect the Rays to have a good bullpen. It's almost like a given, and when they don't, that's when you start to see major issues. If that's not working, then what's going to? And I think that's been kind of the theme over these couple of months now, and maybe it has been the offense specifically in July, but when the ball is not going for you and you're the Tampa Bay Rays, you're gonna have a lot of trouble finding things to work as an entire team.
Right, especially this is the Rays for a long time have been known as a very low budget, but just construct the roster the right way type team, and it doesn't cost that much to build a good bullpen, and they've shown it time and time again. Just it seems like picking guys off the street and transforming them into a guy that throws 99 and gets 15 strikeouts per nine. That just seems to be
like, yeah, a random
MO.
guy with 2 first names.
Yeah. right. Yeah, Charles Frank, he's coming up soon. They picked him up off waivers from the Nationals, and
and like his fastball, he's added 4 miles an hour to it. He's also added like 300 RPM naturally somehow. Don't understand how that works.
Like, yes, will it be tragic when he hits the 60-day IL in May of 2025? Yes, but we have to appreciate him while he's there. I mean, he's going to be so fun. There's going to be so many pitching ninja videos of him. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
But the Rays have not been produced. They haven't produced that guy this year. It seems. I don't know.
It looked like Kevin Kelly was going to be that guy for a while, and ERA wise, he kind of still has been, but I mean, it's not to the degree that they brought up, like Jason Adam last year, or any of the guys previously, Nick Anderson in 2019, Andrew Kittredge in 2021. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, I mean, it's not just their FIP that's trailing. Also in this span, as you mentioned, since May 12th, they're also 19th in ERA, which doesn't rank as lowly as the FIP, but I mean that's still below average. It's not necessarily that they're preventing a lot of runs either. They're still below average at preventing runs in this span out of the bullpen. And yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some action they can take at the deadline, but I think when you're talking Rays and deadline, bullpen has never been a thing that they've talked about, but this year it's going to have to be.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
But I'm the names out on the bullpen market are never very big unless there's some closer out there, and if there was a big closer out there, I don't think the Rays would go and get him, but they could find some guy that their team is looking at where it's like, all right, maybe he has a 4.1 ERA right now, but we have some data to point out that like we could transform him into a really good reliever here.
Yeah, the issue is the Orioles have already done that with Shintaro Fujinami, who is exclusively that guy. Like, he has an 8.57 ERA, but he's actually been really good over June and July, and he also has like a 99 mile an hour fastball with movement that somehow people were hitting.
Yeah,
like early on.
That's very true. Yeah, we could probably get into the do you want to get into the Orioles now?
Do you want to do the Yankees now, since we're kind of on the topic of struggling teams?
Yeah, that works
and then
for me.
We'll finish off on a positive note before going into players to highlight.
Yeah. That I can definitely vibe with that. So we'll keep things negative for now, but we will get positive eventually. So the Rays have lost 9 out of 11, and the Rays have lost 12 out of 15. The Yankees have lost 9 out of 11. And
they've also
they
lost 11 out of 17 overall in the month of July.
Right. They've lost 11 out of 17, and they've gone 15 and 22 since Aaron Judge went down with an injury. So they were kind of treading water. And then all of a sudden they've lost 9 out of 11, which is, turn them into they're only 3 games above 500. And they're also, out of a playoff spot. If the season ended today, what have you been thinking about the Yankees?
It's been certainly a combination of things, but overall, it's their pitching as an entire unit. Really, Garrett Cole is the Yankees pitching staff. They would be somehow 1,000 times worse even if he wasn't there. In July specifically, they had the second worst bullpen in the league by FWAR, only ahead of, like I mentioned, the Los Angeles Angels, who have been just dreadful in this time. They have a 5.28 bullpen ERA in July, a 5.55 FIP, 5.72 walks per nine, most specifically, has been, an issue. Walks, I think, are just generally a lot more elevated as a reliever. Like, looking into more mental side of things, like, there's just a lot worse. It's a lot worse to walk people as a reliever than it is a starter. I don't know how else to explain that. But that's been the issue kind of throughout. Biggest culprit has been Michael King. Over the span, he has a 4.35 ERA and a 6 FIP in 10 innings pitched, 5 games appeared in. He does have the strikeouts, but he's walked 4.3 per nine and given up 1.74 home runs per nine, which has been, kind of an issue. Also, your guy, Chris, Ron Marinaccio, 10.29 walks per nine in 7 innings pitched, a 7.14 FIP. That's a problem. No one has really, like I mentioned, stepped up in this bullpen outside of, you could say, Wandy Peralta, and kind of that's about it.
Right. Yeah, and the Yankees, at least last year, like, a lot of their success came from that bullpen. Holmes, Peralta, and King for the first half of the year were like, those were the guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think, what's been well publicized, and it's almost cliche to talk about on this show, but, like, the Yankees are a far different team without Aaron Judge. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
either of us would disagree with that notion. And I
think we all agreed with that. I think that was something we kind of agreed about going into the season, was that Aaron Judge really carried that offense down the stretch last year when they were struggling. He was on like an immaculate run in like July through the end of the season. And even then the Yankees were like kind of hovering 500 or like just barely above it in that time. Like, I mentioned, like, from in the second half, like, he had like half of the Yankees FWAR or whatever, position player wise. And they didn't really add to that offense in the offseason. They kind of just kept Judge around. So they kind of rolled out the same lineup that, got swept by the Astros, and primarily because of their offense. They added to their starting pitching, which hasn't helped. Carlos Rodon has not been good in the 3 starts that he's made. Luis Severino has not been the same guy that he was before the injury. Domingo Germán's been inconsistent. Obviously, he did throw a perfect game, but other than that, we just haven't seen a ton of dominance out of him. And then, Clark Schmidt, he had a good ERA run for a while, but his last 2 starts, he's been a little bit worse. He's given up a few home runs. He does a very good strikeout to walk numbers, but he hasn't been keeping the ball in the yard. But Garrett Cole has been actually carrying this rotation entirely himself.
Yeah, right. And heading into the year, we both picked the Yankees second place. Part of that had to do with the Blue Jays. We thought there was more potential with the Blue Jays that they weren't showing us last year. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been a little bit of the same this year, although I think 5.5 out of the AL East, and they're in a wild card spot. So they're doing fine. But with the Yankees, we were like, there was some overperformance last year, and we talked about how even if Aaron Judge, if he played out this whole healthy year and was, and he was, an MVP caliber player, he still could be, 3 to 4 wins, worth 3 to 4 wins less. And it's been exaggerated this year because he's literally not in the lineup. He hasn't been in the lineups for a month and a half here. But we talked about, like, you can't rely on Nestor Cortez going out there with a sub 2.5 ERA, this upcoming year. And you can't rely on Anthony Rizzo being a guy with like a 130 OPS plus. You can't rely on these things. So that's why we expected a little bit of, digression this year.
Yeah, no, I agree. No one else on the offense has been able to step up in Judge's absence. Rizzo specifically has like a 190 slugging in his last like 30 something games, which has been pretty devastatingly bad for the Yankees. Yeah, right. Really only Gleyber Torres has been like kind of decent, but that's it.
Right. And breaking down what the Yankees offense has done in Judge's absence, I think that these stats have been all over, but we'll talk about them. They are last in average, which is the most important thing. Just kidding. But they also are second. They have the second worst on base percentage and fourth worst slugging percentage. I think bottom 3 OPS in this span where Judge was initially injured. And then looking individually at that, Anthony Rizzo, as you mentioned, massively struggling since Judge got injured. Anthony Rizzo is hitting 158 with a 484 OPS, a 200 slugging, which is right around what you said in your span. As well, Giancarlo Stanton, who was a slightly alarming of yours this year. He has a 162 batting average and 639 OPS since Judge got injured. DJ LeMahieu only hitting 208 with a 560 OPS. And you're looking at Rizzo, Stanton, and LeMahieu. These are all guys that they acquired and pay a lot of money, which is, it's a real shame, for looking at it from an executive point of view. They're all guys that, the Yankees paid a lot of money. They're guys, in their low to mid 30s too, but you would expect more production out of them, and they're just not giving it.
Yeah, that's been kind of the root of the issues, and that doesn't even go into Josh Donaldson as well, who is now on the 60-day IL. And I know that he had, his expected numbers were a lot better and whatever, but they not only are they paying him a lot of money, but they traded 2 of their assets to get him and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. Josh Donaldson, has put up a 92 OPS plus with the Yankees and 666 plate appearances. IKF we also know about, and that's, that is what it is. But, that's another guy where the Yankees are paying him $21 million this year to get, or, however much of that contract they're paying him to be a below average bat with a 142 batting average, a 225 on base. He did have, what was it, like 15 hits, 10 of them being home runs, which is pretty cool. But, when you have a 142 batting average, like that's only going to hurt your slugging and the rest of your stats.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then he has an above average strikeout rate in this span.
Yes.
Donaldson does. So, that takes away from the probability of having stuff land as hits, obviously. But yeah, what's kind of funny here is looking at, being on Fangraphs and looking at the statistics since, June 4th, which is Judge's first day not playing. But there are 10 Yankees batters with 80 plus plate appearances, and their best OPSs are coming from Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, Gleyber Torres, and Billy McKinney at 780, 746, and 741 respectively. And shout out to those guys for doing well offensively, but you don't want them to be your 3 best guys, especially when they're not overperforming by that much.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not like they're absolutely lighting the world on fire and being some of the best bats in the league. They're kind of just like passable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, oh, IKF 780 OPS. That's pretty cool, but it's not this wild transformation. Whereas, like you'd expect, you would want, LeMahieu, Rizzo, and Stanton being at the top of that list, but they're struggling mightily. They all have OPSs below 650 since Judge got injured. So yeah, tough stuff for the Yankees. So just outlooking them. So they're 3 games above 500. I need to double check to see where they are in the standings. They're very far out in the AL East. They're 9.5 out in the AL East, last place, but that doesn't mean that much in the AL East. They are 4 games out of a wild card spot. So, Judge, I've been following the Judge news quickly for my own personal biases, because he's on my F4 team. But there is positive news coming out of that. It's possible that he might come back, probably like this time of the month in August, or maybe a little bit earlier in August. So what do you think what do the Yankees need to do to stay in playoff contention, in order for them to have a chance when Judge gets back? And what are the odds that they do, get a playoff spot once Judge comes back?
Well, I mean, it certainly depends on the kind of position that they're in, come the Judge coming back, because by that point, you're only going to have like 6 weeks or so left in the season. And obviously they're in a very stacked AL East where the Blue Jays can get hot at any moment and pull away. The Red Sox could get hot and pull away. Even the Astros, and they still haven't, really turned it on yet. I think they have the 3rd wild card spot right now. They're still, the Yankees are almost kind of lucky to be this close in the playoff picture, with how teams like the Astros just haven't been performing as well as expected. Same with the Blue Jays. And I think the biggest thing is the trade deadline. I think it's going to be interesting to see what the Yankees do. I know that the media has forced them to be linked to Shohei Ohtani. I really do not think that's going to happen. Specifically, I mean, I don't think Shohei gets traded to begin with, but if he does, I don't think it's to the Yankees. I just don't think that they have sufficient enough prospects to be able to get it done, even if it's just for 2 months. But hey, you need to make sure, but everyone needs to know the Yankees are in on them, because that's what everyone wants in the media, Buster Olney specifically. Yeah, no, they've absolutely forced that narrative so hard. They want it so bad.
Yeah, he'd look good in pinstripes.
Yeah, he's also he so clearly doesn't want to play in New York. First of all, the Yankees were the favorite to get him when he first was coming over. And he straight up was like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm actually not playing in New York. I'm not doing that. I will look elsewhere." Before there was even offers on the table. Also, I don't know if you saw this, but this could just be speculation, but he homered against the Yankees the other day and bad flipped more than usual, and it's yeah, he doesn't want to play for the Yankees. Right. That one meant something to him. That one meant something. Yeah. So he's not. I really don't see it happening. This trade deadline is just so weird, because there's not really a lot of big names that move me that are on the market, because because a lot of the bad teams are just so young. Like the Pirates, for instance, it's but obviously not trading Brian Reynolds because they just extended him. They're not trading any of their young guys because they're still very much in the development process of those guys. The only teams I think that really have interesting assets are the Cardinals and the White Sox.
Right. And even with the Cardinals, I could see them selling a little bit, but I don't think they're really giving up on anything beyond this year, considering the talent that they do have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't see. I know that they have come out and said we're putting everything on the table, including Arenado and Goldschmidt. I still don't see that happening, to be honest.
Yeah, that
and also I
is
think
weird to me.
Yeah, and also I think Corbin Burns off the table now. Maybe he was never on it, but the Brewers are actually in first place, and the division is theirs to lose. So, that was a conspiracy theory I had, but I think it went from 5% to 0% since the All-Star break.
Oh yeah.
Dylan Cease is probably the best pitcher out there.
Sorry, who is that?
I think Dylan Cease is the best pitcher out there. Just looking at the White Sox specifically, like I don't think they trade Luis Robert. Maybe they trade Eloy, just because he hasn't been like as amazing, and he's probably around ARB eligible now. He's got to be in he's got to be in his 4th year of service time, right?
Right. The White Sox are so weird to me. Like it can't be emphasized enough how much of a failure they've been this year. Like the AL Central has been such a cesspool of mediocrity, and the White Sox have been even worse than
mediocre. They're 40. Yeah, they're worse than the Detroit Tigers. Yeah, they're worse than the Detroit Tigers this year, which is unfortunate.
And you can't really blame, you could blame it on management, but it's not obvious like with what it was with Tony La Russa. It's not that. It's just the players have been not playing well, and I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. I think they're not hitting for power as much outside of like Luis Robert. Tim Anderson and Andrew Benintendi are out there hitting like a combined like 2 homers or something like that.
Tim Anderson has been a disaster this year.
Yeah, he has been. He was a slightly alarming to mine earlier in the year. Yeah, the White Sox have just been, they started the year bad, and I was the most optimistic about them before this season, but they have not really been, they just haven't been that for they haven't fulfilled my prediction at all, and haven't really come close to it this year.
To be fair, I don't think anyone could have predicted this.
Right.
Yeah, they went what 81 and 81 last year, and we saw it as a failure. Like, yeah, this is worse. This is worse. Like way worse.
Right. Yeah, and the fact that they're probably selling already is I really feel for that fan base, because they waited so long for the rebuild, and the rebuild was going to be so effective, and it looked like it was gonna, like they had all the pieces in place.
Yeah, I was so in on the White Sox. Yeah,
they had all the pieces in place, and they just never executed. And I don't know how much of the blame can even go to Tony La Russa. It's just, it didn't work. I don't know what
or even Rick Hahn for that matter.
Right. Yeah.
Like flipping like Jose Quintana for Eloy and Cease was awesome.
Right.
Like that was sick. Flipping Chris Sale for Moncada. I know he hasn't been fantastic, but he had his moments, and like I think that was an overall successful trade for the White Sox.
Yeah, and they got Kopech out of that too.
Yeah, they got Kopech out of that too, who had his moments and had his struggles. He also had Tommy John surgery, which is just very unfit.
Yeah, getting Giolito for Eaton.
Yeah, getting Giolito for Adam Eaton.
Right. Like, I mean, the pieces were there. It just hasn't come together. It came together for one division win in 2021, where they were the 3rd seed and then lost in 4 to the Astros. And that's been the highest potential the White Sox have reached, which is very unfortunate.
I think the individual that deserves the most blame is probably Jerry Reinsdorf. I mean, like, just bringing in La Russa set the franchise back so far, especially with the hitting philosophy that came with him, because they really emphasized hitting for contact. Like, there's the famous like quote meme of the hitting coach saying like "F the home run, let's hit 300," which we see how that works in 2023. That philosophy works, and I feel like maybe it's just stayed in the Pedro Grifol era. I mean, statistically, it's definitely stayed. I don't know if it's still being preached or not, but Jerry Reinsdorf and his moves, I think, have set the organization back more than any individual over these last 2.5 years.
Right, because even if the GM does all the right things and sets the team up, when the manager hired isn't that well accepted by the players, and you're having controversies in the first couple months, like even when that manager goes, there's something that can't really there's some energy that just can't be like brought back up potentially. And I don't know if maybe that was Pedro Grifol's role, was to bring them back to a place where they were able to believe in themselves. But if that was his role, it just hasn't it hasn't been fulfilled yet.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just been strange to watch them fall apart this year.
Right, exactly. But yeah, I mean this all stemmed from what the Yankees were doing, but
Yep.
I mean, yeah, I think we covered everything with the Yankees. And I guess the White Sox too, but they needed to be talked about. We haven't talked about the White Sox since we were on campus, and
Yeah.
it's been wild what they haven't done is kind of what what the precedent is there. So
hmm
yeah, we'll talk more about them at the trade deadline because I'm sure they'll be active. But with another team that will be active at the trade deadline, hopefully, I guess the fan base is hoping for that, is the Baltimore Orioles, who, as we mentioned previously in the show, have overtaken the Rays as the American League East first placers. I started that sentence weird, so I made sure to end it weird as well. But they are in first place in the American League East, sole possession of it, and they have won 10 of their last 12 in order to get there. As I mentioned, they started July 6.5 games out of the division. So a combination of them doing well and the Rays doing poorly has gotten them into first place. What have you been thinking about the O's?
The O's have been, I mean, yeah, they've been rolling for really just the entire month of July. And yeah, it's convenient for them that they got hot in the moment where the Rays got really cold. I think there's just been such a pendulum swing there. Looking specifically with what's been going right for them, the offense has been solid. They have a 112 weighted runs created plus in the month of July. That is, towards the top of the league. And looking specifically at some bats, Anthony Santander has been killing it in 68 plate appearances, a 179 weighted runs created plus. Gunnar Henderson, we're kind of seeing the breakout right in front of our eyes. He might be really entering the race for AL Rookie of the Year with a 144 weighted runs created plus in July, and his success goes way beyond that. Adley Rutschman's been solid. Obviously, Ryan O'Hearn has been a good bat for them with a 133 weighted runs created plus. And they just had a lot go. They've just not going right for them, specifically on offense. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, and yeah, when you break it down to this 12 game span, the numbers get even better. Anthony, Santander's weighted runs created plus in this 12 game span is 195. Henderson's is at 190, and their respective OPSs are 1078 and 1090, which is pretty unbelievable. They're both slugging well over 600 in the team's last 12 games. Santander, like, I think, shout out to alum of the show, Foolish Bailey. He was very optimistic about Anthony Santander. It was one of his 5 hitters that he liked heading into the season, and we're kind of seeing why. And I think part of what he liked about Santander was very good strikeout and walk numbers while being able to barrel up the ball pretty well. I think he's a pretty good fly ball hitter as well, and that's why he's been using that effectively, and that's why he's been slugging so well. He's slugging, I think, yeah, as I mentioned, he is slugging 632 in his last 12 games, and getting on base at a 447 clip, also with a 14.9% walk rate. Pretty unbelievable. And I wanted to look at their pitching because they're also only allowing 3.6 runs per game in this 12 game span. But yeah, they're scoring over 6 runs per game in their last 12 games, which is very nice. And that's not been against any necessarily slouches. I mean, they beat the Rays yesterday. They played the Dodgers, and I believe, did they win that series against the Dodgers? I have to imagine they did.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't. I saw James Outman homered to left, which is very cool. First lefty to ever do it.
That is very impressive.
Yeah, that's the only thing
very impressive.
I saw. I'm going to be honest. I have not been able to watch a ton of Major League Baseball in the last month and a half.
Right.
But I
yeah.
did try to check up on that series.
Yeah, I mean, that was a premier series to watch, and no, they lost that series. They just had a really long win streak that preceded it. But yeah, they won the last game of that series against the Dodgers. They swept Miami, who, believe it or not, is a playoff contender. They swept Minnesota, who is leading the AL Central, and they started this by winning 2 in a row against the Yankees to salvage a split in that series. The Yankees in the Bronx, even if they're without Judge, they're still the Yankees in the Bronx, who, kind of just started faltering around the point where the Orioles started getting hot. And with Baltimore, also, what should be noted is one of their great assets, or maybe the best part of their team, is their bullpen. They have a 2.75 ERA in their last 12 games, 3.36 FIP to go with that. We know how spectacular Felix Bautista has been and how spectacular Yennier Cano has been, but that bullpen as a unit is just fantastic. And yeah, I mean, it's crazy that they are, we both predicted them last place, but here they are in first place. Pretty unbelievable how they've been able to maintain their success that they carried over from like the start of June last year. But I mean, I think this comes to the complicated question of what they do at the deadline, considering also, there isn't much to get at the deadline, but how much do they want to, sacrifice that amazing farm system to potentially add a piece that could get them more World Series?
Yeah, I mean, they've certainly been the surprise team of the year, or at least one of them. I think this team is maybe a bat and a starting pitcher away from being a legitimate World Series contender. I think if you put their bullpen in the playoffs as is, it's one of the best bullpens that we're going to see in October. Yeah, I think they could use another bat. I think they could use another starting pitcher. And the benefit to this team is there's, it's become such a pitcher's park that they can kind of lower their standards on what kind of starting pitcher they need. Like, look at a guy like Lucas Giolito, for instance. He's been struggling lately, and he just hasn't been the same guy that he was in 2021 or whatever. But a lot of his problem has been the home run ball. And, if you put him in Camden Yards, that's going to make him a lot better. And it'll probably give him a lot more confidence, and it can help him maybe even get back to where he was at his peak within 2020 to 2021, when he was just one of the better pitchers in the league. I mean, you look at his numbers this year, he has a 3.13 strikeout to walk ratio, but 1.6 home runs per 9. Let's say he cuts that to, I don't know, 0.9 or whatever, because he's giving up less home runs in Baltimore. That's going to make him an infinitely better pitcher overall.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think, not that they're using these numbers, but I'm sure that, the Orioles might get a guy or two that have really good xFIPs as opposed to FIPs. The xFIP, if you're, if anyone's listening, is trying to figure out what xFIP is, well, FIP is an ERA predictor based off of strikeouts, walks, home runs, and xFIP is a FIP predictor based on home run to fly ball ratio. And when you're playing in Baltimore and maybe you're giving up more hard fly balls to righties, you might have you're going to have a lower home run to fly ball ratio as opposed to a normal stadium. Obviously Baltimore has created this crazy thing for right-handed hitters, so I think what Orioles pitcher or what Orioles management might be looking at is, guys who, if you decrease their home run to fly ball ratio by a lot, they turn maybe into elite pitchers like Lucas Giolito.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I think, like I said, that kind of lowers the standard of what the Orioles are looking for. If home runs are an issue, that's something that they can fix just naturally. They can look for guys, and Giolito is a guy that you can buy low on. He's obviously been struggling a lot this year. Plus, he's a rental, and the Orioles have such an incredible farm system that they can really make it happen without giving up anything that's too consequential to them. I think that's the most obvious move to me if you're the Orioles, is go out and get that guy. And as far as bats, I don't think you need to do anything too crazy. You already have a lot of guys that can do it. I'd say maybe someone with postseason experience to sort of lead that, have that veteran presence. Because I mean, if I'm looking at the team right now, it's a lot of guys that are young, a lot of guys that have been with the Orioles even through the hard days of like 2018 to 21. Not a lot of guys with playoff experience. I mean, I'm looking at the lineup right now, and it's like, Adley, Ryan Mountcastle, Gunnar Henderson, all of which certainly don't have playoff experience. I would say, if anything, try to go out and get a shortstop, because Jorge Mateo has not been really cutting it lately. I don't really know who's out there off the top of my head, though.
Right. I just go not even considering players that could potentially be out there, but I think for the Orioles specifically with a bat, you might want to get a right-handed bat to kind of complete the lineup. They have some really good like switch hitters with Adley Rutschman and Anthony Santander, but Ryan Mountcastle hasn't been great this year, and obviously Baltimore affects him maybe more than anybody in the league. And Austin Hayes has been good, but I think another right-handed bat could kind of complete the lineup, because
I agree.
This guy Ryan O'Hearn, who I learned was on the team like yesterday. I guess I haven't been watching enough of the Orioles, but he's been a great left-handed bat for them. He's hitting 305 with an 859 OPS out there. So he's, with left-handed bats, if you can consider Rutschman and Santander left-handed bats along with Ryan O'Hearn, I think they seem good over there. Whereas, I think they could maybe use another right-hander, but no specific names come to mind for me.
Yeah, I would agree. This trade deadline is going to be interesting, because I don't think there's a whole lot of names out there.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's why as a show, we haven't really done any like trade deadline breakdowns or anything. Like we did that in 2021, and it ended up being the greatest trade deadline of all time. Whereas this year, you're not going to see future Hall of Famers going on the market unless Ohtani is one of those guys,
which I don't
unlikely.
think he is, or Soto, or even Soto, which I don't think Soto goes on the market either. I think that's another thing that the media has been hyping up. I don't think the Padres have ever given us any reason to believe they would be trading Juan Soto. Yeah, I mean, kind of just looking at like the F4 leaders right now, and it's like Luis Robert, don't think he gets traded. I think the White Sox hold on to him. I think he's the only guy they consider untouchable. Anyone else, like good players on bad teams, like isn't anyone standing out? Maybe like Ha-Sung Kim could be a guy.
Yeah,
could be a name. Maybe that's a guy that the Orioles could go out and get. That could be, honestly, that might be a name for the Orioles.
Right. He's been good. He's been good with the bat as well as an elite defender. I wonder how he compares to Mateo defensively. Like, I know he's better, but by how much?
How much better? Yeah, probably not a ton, but definitely significantly enough, especially with the offensive difference there. Not a power bat, but I don't think you're asking him to be that. Also, I think he's going to cost a little more just because he has more control, even if he's on a contract. His AAV is $7 million, so I don't know.
Right.
It would be a year and a half of Ha-Sung Kim. There was a 2025 mutual option, but those are literally never accepted. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Right. With Kim, I think he'd definitely be an upgrade over Adam Frazier at second base, in both respects. So there is that, and also with Kim it's like he's a right-handed hitter, but he's not really going to get affected by Baltimore too much because he's more of a contact guy. He'll get on base. He's not going to slug a lot, but he'll get on base. So yeah, I mean, I feel that's like a potential option.
Another potential bat could be Cody Bellinger.
True. Yeah.
He's been hitting very well all season, and specifically like in the recent past.
Yeah, I saw it. Grand slam.
So that's one that you could go for.
Yeah, he had a grand slam off James Paxton, and I witnessed it with my own two eyes. But I did see the Red Sox hit a grand slam the next day, so it all evened out. It was funny. I watched the Red Sox lose by 6 and then win by 6. So
run differential 0.
run differential zero. When the Pythagorean and real record match, that's baseball right there.
Perfect. Yeah.
So
It's baseball and it's so like unbaseball.
it is very unbaseball. Yeah. You figure, yeah, there'd be something uneven there. All right. So yeah, anything more before we head into players to highlight?
I think that's kind of everything.
All right. Well, now we will get into a very optimist, our positive vibes, good vibes with our Friday, July 21, 2023 edition of How About That?
He's striking out less, walking more, and he's also making better contact.
Turning into a strikeout machine just out of nowhere.
He's been excellent all around this year.
He is getting a
How about that?
Yeah, so my how about that for today is Chas McCormick of the Houston Astros. I have a feeling you might have the same guy. I think it's very possible. But throughout the month of July, he is slashing 400, 491, 822 for a 1313 OPS and a 257 weighted runs created plus. Throughout this month, he leads the majors in on-base, slugging, OPS, and weighted runs created plus, and his 1.3 F4 is tied for third amongst all position players, which is excellent. Sorry, no, it is tied for the lead amongst all position players. My bad. He is tied for being the best position player in baseball over the span. He also has a 422 isolated power, which is the fourth highest, because he has a 481 BABIP in the span, which you might look at and say, oh, he's getting lucky. And maybe that's true, but he's also driving the ball just as well as just about anyone in the league, which is key. So before this span, he had a line drive rate of 22.6%. And in this span, it is up to 31.3%, which is a significant increase. His fly ball rate has remained relatively the same, but the average exit velocity on his fly balls has gone from 93 miles per hour to 99 miles per hour, a 6 mile per hour increase. That's the difference between having a home run to fly ball ratio of 44.1% and 62.5%, which is one of the highest in the league. He also has a sweet spot rate of 50% in the month of July. That is tied for the third highest among the 229 hitters with at least 25 bad balls in the span. His hard hit rate has also gone from 33% to 43.8% in this span. His out of zone swing rate has gone from 29.5% to 21.8%. And lastly, his barrel rate has gone from 8.5% to 18.8% before the span and in this span. So Chas McCormick, yes, he has a high BABIP, but he's making the right kind of contact. He's hitting the ball harder. He's placing the ball a lot better. And because of it, he's been one of the best players in all of baseball throughout the month of July.
Yeah, Chas McCormick.
How about that?
Yeah, and when a guy has a high BABIP, but also he's making the right kind of contact, he's hitting the ball hard, he's hitting it in the sweet spot zone, like that makes sense with a high BABIP. It's when you have a high BABIP, but you have like a 50% ground ball rate. That's when you get fishy, and it's like, this guy's not actually doing well. Whereas, yeah, Chas McCormick, he has a 50% sweet spot rate. Of course, he's going to have a higher BABIP because he's hitting it in the right zones. He's hitting probably more line drives, and as well as hard fly balls, as you mentioned. A lot of extra base hits coming from him. My how about that? Splash, because it is a reliever diving time. And it's pretty unbelievable what this guy is doing. And I kind of considered him mostly like a no-name up to this point. However, Tanner Scott has been lighting the world on fire with what he's been able to do. Tanner Scott of the Miami Marlins, left-handed reliever, in his last 28 appearances, he has a 1.26 ERA, a 1.06 FIP, 42% strikeout rate in 28 2/3 innings pitched. And out of 185 qualifying relievers in this span, he is 12th in ERA, third in strikeout rate, third in strikeout minus walk rate, and first in FIP. This is a 2-month span where he is first among relievers in FIP. Along with that, Tanner Scott, out of 231 pitchers with 400 plus pitches thrown in this span, he is 6th in expected batting average, 2nd in expected slugging, and 2nd in expected WOBA. His strikeout rate has gone from 31% before the span to 42% in this span, and his walk rate has gone from 13% to 8%, which pushes his strikeout minus walk rate from 18% before the span up to 34% in this span. Mind you, the league average strikeout minus walk rate is around 14%, and he's at 34% in this span. Along with that, Tanner Scott's whiff rate has gone from 27% to 44%. And out of 212 pitchers with 200 plus swings against them in this span, his whiff rate ranks second. And his whiff rate on his slider has gone from 33% up to 49%. And out of 68 pitchers with 100 plus swings against sliders in the span, his whiff rate ranks fourth. Along with, he's a 2-pitch pitcher, and his other pitch has also been getting way more swings and misses. Tanner Scott's whiff rate on his 4-seamer has gone from 17% before the span to 37%, more than doubled in the span. And out of 144 pitchers with 100 plus swings against 4-seamers in the span, his whiff rate ranks third on 4-seamers. Along with that, Tanner Scott has been getting hitters to swing a lot more out of the zone. His chase rate has gone from 24% to 40%. Out of 239 pitchers with 200 plus pitches out of the zone in this span, his chase rate ranks second. And along with him getting way more swings and misses on both of his pitches, getting way more chases, and also getting less walks, he is also doing much better in the contact department. His average exit velocity against has gone from 86.2 miles per hour to 82.4 miles per hour. Out of 352 pitchers with 50 plus batted balls against in this span, his average exit velocity is fourth lowest. That's out of 352. That's about top 1% of all pitchers in average exit velocity, on top of all the strikeout rate stuff and swing and miss stuff. Along with that, Tanner Scott's sweet spot rate has gone from 44% to 33% in this span. And in 55 batted balls allowed in this span, he has 1 barrel and 0 home runs allowed. So Tanner Scott just has been lighting the world on fire as a lefty in that Marlins bullpen, and has turned into like the most elite reliever in baseball, maybe outside of Felix Bautista in this span, which is unbelievable to say, considering you didn't really hear much about this guy. So I'm trying to make it that more well known. So Tanner Scott getting a.
How about that?
So yeah, that will move us on to players to highlight for worse reasons, where we will get into the Friday, July 21, 2023 edition of Slightly Alarming Statistics. He's been barreling up the ball way less.
He's not missing bats. He's not getting the ball on the ground, and people are hitting it in the air more.
It's been so bad. He is getting a.
Slightly alarming.
So from slightly alarming, I'm actually going to stay in the same division in the AL West. Bringing back a slightly alarming from last season. Talking about Ty France of the Seattle Mariners. I feel like the Mariners have just been racking up slightly alarmings recently and just in general in this season, and Ty France is certainly one of them. Going back to June 24th, he is slashing 120, 185, 147 for a 332 OPS and a -2 weighted runs created plus and -0.9 FWAR. He ranks dead last among all qualified average, OBP, OPS, and FWAR, and he is second worst in slugging percentage and weighted runs created plus. So he's been kind of dreadful over the last month or so. Among the 136 players with at least 50 batted balls in this span, his expected batting average of 191 is the third worst, his expected slugging of 277 is the fourth worst, and his 240 expected weighted on base average is tied for third worst. So even by expected numbers, he's been one of the worst hitters in the league. But before this span, he had a line drive rate of 20%, and in this span, it is down to just 18.5%. And also before this span, his fly ball rate went from 21.9% to 24.1%, which is a slight increase. And for a guy with like Ty France, who does have power, that might be a good thing. But the problem is that 69.2% of his fly balls have gone to the opposite field. And that is the 6th highest rate among the 205 hitters with at least 10 fly balls. like hitting fly balls to the opposite field kind of just drains a lot of your power. And Ty France is not the most powerful guy. He does have it, but when you think of his assets, I don't know if power is the first one that comes to mind, but he's taking away a lot of the power that he does have by hitting the ball in the air consistently to the opposite field. He's had a lot of balls die on the warning track. And that's a large reason why he's been one of the worst hitters over the last month.
Yeah, Ty France getting a
Slightly alarming.
Yeah, that is that's rough. And I actually, for some reason, I was doing random like research on like league data and seeing like exit velocity on pulled fly balls as opposed to opposite field fly balls, and the difference is major. And I want to just double check to see, just to add to your point here. Just looking at fly balls, batted ball direction, pull, because I mean it's quite the difference between an opposite field fly ball and a pulled fly ball. Average exit velocity on pulled fly balls is 95.4 miles per hour, and league average exit velocity on opposite field fly balls is 88.9 miles per hour. So it's a 6.5 mile per hour difference in exit velocity between pulled and opposite field fly balls. So that's a major difference. And I think that applies to most hitters, is you're going to hit it weaker when you hit it to the opposite field, especially on fly balls. So that leads into my slightly alarming. And for, I think, the first time for either of us, I am doing a subject. And I'm talking about the Angels bullpen, which might be a little weird because, we didn't really expect anything out of the Angels bullpen, but they have been pretty atrocious in the month of July, and part of probably a big reason why they've been, falling in the standings, especially in the wild card standings. But the Angels bullpen in the month of July has an 8.03 ERA, 7.14 FIP, 6.4 walks per nine, and 2.4 home runs per nine in 49 1/3 innings pitched. In the month of July, the Angels bullpen's ERA is second worst, and their FIP, walks per nine, and home runs per nine are all the worst. 12 Angels relievers have thrown 2 2/3 innings or more, and 10 of them have ERAs of 5.5 or higher. 5.5 ERA is not good, and 10 out of the 12 relievers, 10 of the 12 significant relievers for the Angels have ERAs at that or above that. And along with that, 9 of those 12 Angels relievers I just mentioned have FIPs of 5 or higher. So it's not looking good for the Angels bullpen. Looking individually, Jacob Webb has the most innings in that bullpen. He has thrown 7 innings, allowed 5 earned runs, 6 walks, and 2 home runs. Aaron Loop has 4 earned runs in 6 1/3 innings pitched in this span, and a 4.55 FIP. Carlos Estevez, their all-star reliever, he has 3 walks and a home run allowed in 5 innings pitched. And Chris Davinsky has been particularly atrocious. In the span, he has 4 2/3 innings pitched, 9 earned runs allowed, 3 walks, and 2 home runs for a 9.50 FIP, along with a 17.36 ERA. So the Angels bullpen, we didn't really have high expectations for them heading into the season, but they have in the month of July, they have gone far below those low expectations. So they are getting a
Slightly alarming.
That'll do it for players or subjects to highlight, because we do subjects. All right, so now we move on to the preview of the weekend ahead, where I will look at the series to watch. Daniel will be looking at the day-by-day starting pitching matchups, and some of these series have already gotten underway, including the premier series to watch. But before I get into that, I should tell you to tune into Rangers Dodgers, who two division leading teams. Rangers, coming off a sweep against the Rays, as we we talked about the Rays earlier in the show. Rangers are 4 up on the Astros right now, which is pretty cool. And yeah, the Dodgers, and the Rangers are hosting the Dodgers, so that'll be a fun one. Also, the Brewers are hosting the Braves. Brewers are doing pretty well as of late. They are 2 games up on the Reds in the National League Central, and the Braves, of course, have been on a over month-long hot streak. So, have solidified themselves as the best team in Major League Baseball. But they are going to American Family Field and challenging the Brewers. And the premier series to watch is the Rays and Orioles, the 2 best teams in the best division in baseball, with it being the American League East. The Rays obviously struggling, as we mentioned, the Orioles obviously doing extremely well, as we mentioned, but a lot can change here in these next 3 games. Maybe the Orioles are 4 games up on them at the end of this, or maybe the Rays take back the division. Who knows? There's a lot at stake here, especially heading into the trade deadline. All right, so what do we have for the starting pitching matchups?
So on Friday, we have Jack Flaherty versus Justin Steele in Cardinals Cubs. That's a Wrigley Field. Of course, it's an afternoon game, with it being at Wrigley. Kyle Bradish versus Zach Eflin in Orioles Rays. That is in Tropicana Field. Braxton Garrett will be going for the Marlins against the Rockies at Lone Depot Park. Also, we will have Kodai Senga and Cutter Crawford facing each other in Mets Red Sox. That's going to be at Fenway. Ranger Suarez and Gavin Williams will face each other in Phillies Guardians. That's going to be in Cleveland. Tony Gonsolin versus Andrew Heaney. Andrew Heaney will be facing one of his former teams in Dodgers and Rangers. That's going to be in Texas. Joe Ryan will be facing the White Sox for the Twins in Minnesota. Mike Soroka and Freddie Peralta will face each other in Braves Brewers. That is at American Family Field. Shohei Ohtani is pitching tonight against the Pirates at the Big A for the Angels. Framber Valdez will be facing the Astros, or the A's for the Astros. I don't really have anything for matchup of the night, I'm going to be honest. To finish it off, Yusei Kikuchi and Bryce Miller will face each other in Blue Jays and Mariners. For matchup of the night, I guess I will go with Bradish versus Eflin just because it's a big matchup in terms of teams. On Saturday, perhaps the most important, we will have Cameron Hill versus Joey DeCharo to start out the Cape Cod Baseball League All-Star game. It's going to be really exciting. Cameron Hill, of course, of the Katuitt Kettleers, rocking an 0.96 ERA this year. Certainly a guy you're going to want to watch for in a very exciting West versus East matchup. It's going to be at White House Field in Harwich, Massachusetts. So definitely check that one out. Start time 6:05 p.m. But on the Major League side of things, we have Brady Singer versus Garrett Cole in Royals Yankees. That's going to be at Yankee Stadium, by the way. Bobby Miller versus Dane Dunning in Dodgers Rangers. Max Scherzer versus James Paxton in Mets Red Sox. We're going to go with Grayson Rodriguez versus Shane McClanahan in Orioles Rays, obviously in Tropicana. Logan Webb versus Josiah Gray in Giants Nationals in Washington. Zach Wheeler versus Tanner Bybee in Phillies Guardians. Dylan Cease versus Sonny Gray in White Sox Twins. Christian Javier will be facing the A's for the Astros in Oakland. And Reed Detmers will be facing the Pirates for the Angels at the Big A. And matchup of the night comes from Blue Jays Mariners in Seattle. It is Kevin Gausman versus Logan Gilbert.
Yeah, those are two guys.
The Northern Invasion series, as they call it.
Those are two guys that do not enjoy walks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Exactly. Then going into Sunday, finishing things off, it'll be Joe Musgrove facing the Tigers for the Pirates at Comerica Park. That'll be the 12:05 game. Mackenzie Gore will be facing the Giants for the Nationals in Washington. You will have Tyler Wells and Taj Bradley facing each other in Orioles Rays. Aaron Nola facing the Guardians for the Phillies in Cleveland. Jesus Luzardo will be facing the Rockies for the Marlins at home. Bryce Elder and Julio Teheran will face each other in Braves Brewers. Jordan Montgomery will face the Cubs for the Cardinals in Wrigley. Emmett Sheehan, who's been pitching very well lately, will face the Rangers for the Dodgers in Texas. Mitch Keller and Tyler Anderson will face each other in Pirates and Angels. Alek Manoah and Brian Wu will face each other in Blue Jays Mariners. And matchup of the day comes from White Sox Twins. I'm going to go with Lucas Giolito versus Bailey Ober. Giolito, of course, a trade watch. Bailey Ober has been pitching extremely well lately, so I would watch those two.
Yeah, two very contrasting pitching styles. Ober's low strikeout, low walk, and Giolito's high strikeout, but also sometimes high walk. All right. Well, that shall wrap up the 258th installment of Above Replacement Radio. We hope you enjoyed this one. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens, go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio. We also have a bunch of shorts on there. We also have playlists like the Baseball History Series, like also all of our guest interviews are all in one playlist now. Don't know why I didn't do that earlier, but you can check out all the interviews with, Sarah Langs, Mark Simon multiple times, Chris Rose, Jeff Passan, Amy Crawford, Marty Dobrow, all those wonderful, wonderful interviews that we've had.
Some coming soon as well.
Yes. Foolish Bailey as well. Go check it out, all on the YouTube channel. And also, if you want to follow us on social media, follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gianta, and follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran, and follow the show Instagram at Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed
real quick,
this one.
one last thing. I know I plugged this earlier, but if you're in the New England area and you have nothing to do on a Saturday at 6 p.m., actually 7 p.m., it's going to be an hour delayed, but the Cape Cod Baseball League All-Star Game will be shown on NESN at 7 p.m. after the Red Sox and Mets game at 4 o'clock. If you're in the area and interested, I highly recommend checking it out. There will be some future major leaguers in that game on both sides. Also, the Cape League will be doing a YouTube live stream from, I believe 1 p.m. all the way around 7. I'm going to be popping in and out of that live stream. Even if I'm not there, we have some incredibly talented broadcasters over at the Cape League, so I would recommend checking that one out. We're going to have interviews with various all-stars. Also, some MLB players are going to be in attendance, so if you're in the area even, I would recommend checking it out. Tickets are $10 on the Cape League website. It's going to be a really fun event. I'm stoked, and I think if you're interested, you should totally check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go on the Cape Cod League website, look up Daniel Curran. There's a lot of articles that he's written this summer, including a long one about Travis Bazzana. Yeah, that was some fine work. So go check that out. Along with
if you're interested
all of his other work.
For him specifically, if you're interested in learning about a guy that could be the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft, maybe a top 10 pick, most likely a first-round pick, highly recommend checking him out. A native of Australia, he started playing professional baseball at age 15, and he's a fantastic person, fantastic player. That's one that I would check out for sure.
Right, and also earlier in the summer, wrote about guys like Tino Martinez and Steve Cishek. Good stories over there as well. So check out all of and if you want to get everything as it happens, go to Daniel's Twitter. It is at Daniel_Curran, updating you on all the work he's doing with the CCBL this year. So yeah, and we hope you enjoyed this episode of Above Replacement Radio, and we will see you next time, where we are talking all the happenings in Major League Baseball once again. See you then.
This conversation is over.